This is part 2 of 4 on the topic, Money and the Federal Reserve System. This year is the 100th anniversary of the signing in 1913 of the bill creating the Federal Reserve System. The primary stated function of the Federal Reserve System is to control inflation. In 1788, 1 ounce of gold was worth about $24. In 1913, 1 ounce of gold was worth about $24. Despite 2 major wars from 1788 to 1913, there was no inflation. So why create an institution to control a problem that doesn't exist? I do not have the time today to discuss all the reasons for the creation of the Fed. Suffice it to say that the reasons were nefarious. Today, 1 ounce of gold is worth about $1,300 and, in my opinion, is extremely undervalued at that price. How has the Fed done for 100 years in controlling inflation? The Fed is in fact about the worst thing mankind could have created to fight inflation. The Fed chairman claims that inflation is under control and uses the Consumer Price Index to help justify that claim. I think I can say plainly to you tonight that the CPI is being doctored and is artificially low. In 2009, the CPI was computed at 5%. Using the same system that had been used from the founding of the Republic until 1980, the CPI for 2009 would be computed at 13%. It is in the government's interest to keep the CPI as low as possible. Some reasons are, first, people think inflation is under control. Second, the government saves billions annually in pension adjustments, particularly in Social Security. Third, an artificially low CPI overstates the growth of the economy. There have been many ways offered to lower the CPI since it offers savings to the government, and a way to lower it further was even part of the Simpson-Bowles study. I think I can safely tell you tonight that old people that depend exclusively on Social Security are being slowly and systematically starved to death by these calculations. An independent commission to compute the CPI would certainly be desirable. Who will pay off the national debt? It will not be paid by your children and grandchildren, but will be paid with worthless money. Whoever is here as this is occurring will be the victims of these events. To a certain extent, you are paying this debt as we sit here through inflation. But at present, the debt is accumulating faster than the inflation can pay it. This situation will not continue. Eventually, the inflation will overcome the debt, and once you reach that point, there is probably no recovery possible, and the consequences of money becoming worthless will be horrific. Particularly hard hit will be the poor, the old, and people who save, but everyone will shoulder at least some of the burden. The suffering will be wide-scale and immense. I came here tonight to discuss 4 things I consider to be partial or complete myths. Myth number 1, China controls our economy since it owns so much of our debt. Actually, China is a straw man for the real problem, the federal government. China is doing what it deems necessary to protect itself from what it sees as America's destruction of the dollar. China is also working to undermine the dollar as the world's reserve currency by making agreements with other nations to bypass the use of the dollar. China is actually attempting to move away from the use of the dollar. Myth number 2, inflation is under control in America. Any examination of the activities of the Federal Reserve will refute that. Myth number 3, the Consumer Price Index is an accurate reflection of inflation in America. In Argentina, the government reports inflation at 10% per year. Independent commissions report Argentine inflation at 25 to 30% per year. Lately, they have been having food protests in Argentina, and I can assure you that 10% inflation is not enough to cause such protests. When responsible people in the government of Argentina report that government inflation calculations are inaccurate, they are thrown in jail. I only use Argentina as an example to show what governments will do to delude people into thinking that all is well. Myth number 4. The national debt will be paid by our children and grandchildren. The debt will be paid by everyone through hyperinflation and the destruction of the value of the currency. This is the end of part 2 of 4.